our concerning or frightening future. Our world is currently changing both within the micro and macro levels. Many would agree that there are abnormal occurrences happening in the world right now. For some who did not see this coming, it may appear to be unpredictable or even uncertain. But I would still think that most of us would have to agree that you would need to be oblivious or in denial not to be at least a little more concerned than usual. The future of the world right now is indeed frightening and more than a little concerning. So, predictable or not, it is not to say that these concerns are not valid. And just a reminder that if you find my work interesting, whether you agree with it or not, please consider supporting me with a like, subscribe, or contribution through this site, my Patreon page, or my PayPal page. Indeed, there is a change on the horizon, but whether you think that it is for the good or bad depends upon when and where the question is asked and which side your sympathies are more inclined towards. The common theme in many governments and societies, from what some would proclaim as democratic to what some would claim as authoritarian or totalitarian, as well as in long-held institutions supporting various ideologies and beliefs, there are noticeable schisms forming. There is unprecedented civil unrest in a variety of locations and organizations throughout nations and societies in the world. Of course, the significance of the intensity or form of the civil unrest is in relation to what was previously experienced in that nation, societal group, or organization. When viewing these instances of civil unrest, we cannot forget the relevance of the time and place in which they occur. We can compare current experiences and instances to previous experiences and instances within that nation, society, or group to fully appreciate the fact that nations, societies, and organizations throughout the world are increasingly under stress. From democratic to authoritarian or totalitarian governments, and in addition, nations, societies, institutions, and organizations of various kinds from around the globe are feeling unprecedented threats and divisions from within. Some of these threats are reasonable or even justifiable, while others are not. Yes, whether a specific instance is or is not justifiable, the circumstances surrounding it should be concerning. However, it is the simultaneous instability that I find more concerning. This opens up the opportunity for those opportunists and miscalculations that I find concerning the most. I believe we are at a crossroads that could lead to positive and productive changes or lead to negative or disastrous changes. The disenchantment of populations within democratic nations is particularly troublesome to me. There are many in those democratic nations that are disenchanted and question their democratic process or even the democratic process in general. Some also believe that their vote is not heard or voting does not matter. Whomever is in charge is going to put whom they want in office anyway. To these people I ask, what is the alternative? Yes, there is the possibility that those in charge could be put in charge by force. But I ask, what about next time? Leadership put into power by force creates the opportunity for others, possibly less favorable, to be put in charge in the future. Once this leadership is put in charge by force, it becomes a difficult or virtually impossible practice to break. You may be at the receiving end next time. Concerning within those democratic nations is the rise of both the extreme left and the extreme right. However, it is the rise of the extreme right and attributed violence that has my attention and concern at the moment, rather than the extreme left because of current disorganization. As for those authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, ideological movements, I am in no way a fan of those regimes and believe reform is necessary, but not going to be necessarily welcomed. The escalation of events in the world is concerning. At the same time that there is a disenchantment in democratic nations, there is also an unprecedented rise of public rejection of those authoritarian or totalitarian regimes within those authoritarian or totalitarian nations. Yes, those populations within those authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, rightly so, have the right to rise, and they should reject those authoritarian or totalitarian regimes. However, this still does not negate the fact that all this civil unrest is still concerning. What makes it more concerning for me is that there seems to be very similar simultaneous similarities in democratic to democratic, authoritarian to authoritarian, or totalitarian to totalitarian across borders with all of this conflict at the same time. In the past, the rise of disenchanted populations within oppressed societies have led to marvelous births of systems when those oppressed do rise. However, this has also led other populations down dark paths. The result of the disenchantment in the past was relatively isolated in the sense that discord in one part of the world would have a limited effect in another part of the world, with a relatively limited potential of a feedback ripple effect. But today, there is a greater risk and probability of chain reactions feeding off each other. Today, compared to the past, there is a greater risk of escalation of instability and an echo of a feedback ripple effect, and more severe potential consequences. Yes, it will eventually quiet down, but where and to what extent will these instabilities occur until then? Governments, along with ideals, societies, and long-held institutions, from the democratic to the authoritarian or totalitarian, are increasingly feeling pressure from disenchanted and oppressed populations. Within all types of these noticeable or vocal populations, there are numbers increasingly beginning to express their discontent with their respective leaderships, as well as divisions occurring from within. From the democratic to the authoritarian or totalitarian, from the more liberal to the more conservative, a significant percentage of the population is becoming uneasy. Is there a breaking point on the horizon? I also believe populations throughout the globe on different sides feel as if many fellow citizens and whom those citizens follow have lost touch. Many also believe corruption has become to the point of causing instability or creating an inability to protect, and in some people and in many ways this may be correct. This sentiment is not just isolated within governments in the world, but still, I hope that what is lost because of this is replaced with a positive force, not just in governments, but faith in institutions on the global macro and community micro levels seem to be deteriorating around the globe as a whole, in the sense of more division being created and splintering. In fact, faith in various and many institutions, not just political, around the globe seem to be deteriorating in the sense of splintering and whom to follow. Not to say that the faith or belief itself is less strong, but, on the contrary, it is increasing for some to the point of radicalization or becoming distorted. In addition, that faith in the ability of that leadership, institution, or government to conduct their said ideals is deteriorating in the sense of blind extremism or splintering. Those that have not become disenchanted with it all, there is stronger support for the current or stronger support for the opposition, to the point of blind followership. With those that have become blinded, along with those in the middle that have lost faith in the leadership of both sides, it is the ideal that suffers. This deterioration in the faith of leadership, justified or not, valid or not, has led to the rise of opportunists and more significant splintering. Unfortunately, the religious and ideological beliefs around the globe seem not to be immune. This has given those opportunists the ability to co-opt these institutions or beliefs. This, in my own opinion, results in the devaluing of that faith or institution. In some cases, this splintering has also given way to cases of extremism with different forms of control, oppression, and violence. For those true believers of those faiths or institutions, it is up to you to continue to take a stand against this devaluation of that faith or institution, even when it results in personal detriment. In this upcoming series, my intent is to explore more of these topics and discuss possible solutions or actions. And thank you again for your like, subscribe, or contribution to either the YouTube or Patreon page.